53 years. That's how long I kept the secret. And I'm 71 years old, sitting here telling you this, because I almost didn't make it to the other side. I want to tell you something before we go any further. This story isn't just about me. I think you already know that, or you wouldn't still be here. Because maybe your secret isn't the same as mine. Maybe yours is that you married the wrong person. Maybe you walked away from a calling that kept you up at night for 30 years. Maybe you stayed in a city, a career, a version of yourself that never actually fit. The shape of the cage is different, but the weight of it, the weight is the same. I grew up in Rockford, Illinois. Saturday mornings smelled like cut grass and motor oil. My father was the kind of man who shook your hand before he hugged you, if he hugged you at all. Church on Sunday was non-negotiable. You sat in that pew, you wore your good shoes, and you were grateful. I was grateful. I was also 12 years old and already learning how to disappear. I knew what I was by the time I was 14. I didn't have language for it the way people do now. It was 1967. You didn't have language for it. What you had was a feeling that lived in the center of your chest like something broken, something you couldn't show anyone without everything falling apart. So you did what you were taught to do in Rockford, Illinois in 1967. You put your head down. You got to work. You became someone useful. I met Patricia when we were both 23. She was working at a dental office on State Street, and she had this laugh. You could hear it from across a parking lot. I genuinely loved her. I want to be clear about that, because what I'm about to say gets complicated if you don't understand that first. I loved her the way you love someone who makes the unbearable feel manageable. She was warm and steady, and she believed in me before I believed in myself. And I chose to build a life with her knowing, on some level, that I was handing her a story she didn't know she was agreeing to. I've carried that. I still carry it. We had 3 kids, a house on Greenfield Avenue with a maple tree in the front yard that turned red every October. I coached Little League for 11 years. I went to every school play, every graduation. I was present for all of it. That's the part nobody talks about. You can be fully present in a life that is quietly killing you, because it was killing me. Not dramatically, not all at once. The way a slow leak kills something. I started having trouble sleeping in my mid-30s. Nothing dramatic, just 4 a.m, eyes open, ceiling. My doctor put it down to stress. He wasn't wrong. He just didn't know what the stress was. By 45, I had an ulcer. My blood pressure was creeping up every year. I was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. And I kept thinking, this is just what getting older feels like. This is what responsibility feels like. This is just life. It's not just life. There's actually research on this now, and it's worth saying plainly because this audience deserves the truth. Chronic concealment, hiding a core part of who you are year after year, activates your body's stress response in a way that does not turn off. Your cortisol stays elevated. Your nervous system doesn't regulate the way it should. It's not metaphorical. Your body keeps score. Every single day you carry the weight, your body is counting it. The ulcers, the insomnia, the blood pressure, those weren't coincidences. Those were my body trying to tell me something I refused to hear. I refused to hear it for 53 years. The moment it started to crack open wasn't what you'd expect. There was no dramatic confrontation, no crisis point. It was a Tuesday in November of 2022. Patricia had passed 3 years earlier. Cancer, quick and merciless, 18 months from diagnosis to the end. I was living alone in a smaller place by then, the kids grown and scattered, and I was watching television, which I'd started doing more just to have noise in the house. There was a documentary on, I don't even remember what channel, about older gay men in their 60s and 70s talking about their lives. And one of them, a man named Robert, 74 years old with a white beard and glasses, said something that stopped me cold. He said, "I spent 40 years being someone everyone else was proud of, and then I spent 10 years being someone I could finally look at in the mirror." I sat with that for a long time. I called my youngest son Daniel the next morning. He's 38 now, lives in Portland with his wife and 2 daughters. Of my 3 kids, Daniel was always the one who asked the harder questions. He was the one who, when he was about 14, looked at me over dinner and said, "Dad, are you happy?" And I laughed it off. I said something about being tired from work. He let it go, but I could tell he filed it somewhere. When I called him that November morning, I didn't plan to say what I said. We talked for a few minutes about nothing, the grandkids, his job. And then I just said it. I said, "Daniel, I need to tell you something that I should have told you a long time ago." There was a pause, and then he said very quietly, "I know, Dad." I don't know exactly what he knew or how long he'd known it, but something in the way he said it it opened a door. I cried for the first time in probably 20 years, and he stayed on the phone with me for 4 hours. I didn't tell my other 2 children right away. That took months, and it was not clean or easy. My daughter Renee, 42, took it hard. Not because of what I am, she got there, but because of what it meant about her mother, about the marriage. She asked me once, point blank, "Did Mom know?" And I told her the truth. I don't know. I think Patricia suspected something, some version of it, and chose not to name it. I think she built a life anyway and loved me anyway. And Renee said, "That makes it worse, not better." She's right. I know she's right. My oldest, Mark, 44, barely spoke to me for 6 months. He came around eventually. But I want you to hear that clearly, because if you're sitting on a secret of your own and you're thinking about what comes next, I won't lie to you. Some relationships will bend. Some will take time to recover. That's real. I'm not going to pretend this is a story with no losses, because it isn't. Here's what I want to tell you, though. Here's the part that matters. If you are 50 years old right now, you have, statistically, somewhere around 30 years left. 30. That is not nothing. That is another whole life. If you are 60, you have 20. If you are 70 like me, you might have 15 or 10 or 5, and every single one of those years is yours to actually inhabit if you choose to. I spent 53 years performing a version of myself that was approximately 60% real. The other 40% lived in silence, in that 4 a.m. ceiling stare, in an ulcer on the lining of my stomach. I got to 70 before I let the whole thing breathe. And what I want to tell you, what I need you to actually hear, is that it's not too late. But it's also not free. The longer you wait, the more you pay. Last spring, I went to dinner with a man named Thomas. He's 68. He teaches high school history in Burlington, Vermont, and he has this habit of tapping his fingers on the table when he's about to say something he's nervous about. We sat at a table by the window at a restaurant I'd never been to before, and at some point during the meal, I reached across the table and put my hand over his to stop the tapping. And he looked at me, and I didn't pull my hand back. I was 71 years old, and I held a man's hand in public for the first time in my life. I want you to sit with that for a moment. 71 years. The coffee in my cup was getting cold, and there was a couple at the next table, and it didn't matter. None of it mattered. What mattered was that for the first time in 53 years, the person sitting at that table was entirely, completely me. That's what the reward looks like. Not abstract freedom, not some idea of authenticity. A cold cup of coffee and a hand across a table, and the world not ending. I sleep now, properly, through the night. My blood pressure is the lowest it's been in 15 years. My doctor asked what I changed, and I told him, and he laughed in a kind way and said, "Well, that would do it. The body knows. When you stop carrying the weight, the body knows." I want to say one more thing about Patricia, because I think about her every day, and she deserves more than a footnote in this story. She was not a victim. She was a full person who made choices with the information she had, and she built something real with that. The love in our house was real. The life we made was real. But she also deserved a partner who showed up in every room, not just most of them. I owed her that, and I couldn't give it to her, and that is a grief I will carry for however long I have left. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because grief and freedom can exist at the same time. And if you're going to do this, whatever your version of this is, you have to be willing to hold both. What is the lie you're living? I'm asking you directly, not to be cruel, because I know what it costs to keep maintaining something that isn't true. The energy alone. Do you have any idea how much energy it takes to sustain a false version of yourself for decades? It's staggering. And you've normalized it so thoroughly that you don't even notice it anymore. It's just the hum in the background, the low-grade exhaustion that you filed under. That's just how I am. It's not how you are. It's what you're carrying. There's a name, SAGE, Services and Advocacy for LGBTQ Elders, and they have a helpline and support groups specifically for older people navigating this. I'll say that plainly in case someone needs to hear it. The Trevor Project if you're younger. Your own therapist if you have one. A good one who doesn't flinch. There are people who understand this and have walked through it. You don't have to build the path yourself, but you do have to decide to start walking. I'm 71. I wasted, if I'm being honest, somewhere between 40 and 50 years of the full version of myself. What I'm asking you, what I'm genuinely, with everything I have, asking you, is to not do the math on yourself and come up with the same number. You're here. You're reading this. Something in you is already moving toward the door. That part of you isn't wrong. It's the most right thing about you. You don't get the years back. No one does. But you are not out of time. Not yet. And a cold cup of coffee on the right side of a window, with the right person, with your whole self finally at the table. I promise you, it is worth every hard conversation you've been afraid to have. I just wanted you to know that from someone who finally knows. If this hits something in you, something you've been sitting with for a while, I'd really like to know. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you are in this. I read every single one. If you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it with them. No explanation needed. Just send it. And if you want more conversations like this one, subscribe. I'm not going anywhere. I've got time now.